Hey there, guys, it's Metro, and today is a very interesting day. I've never really seen an announcement for an announcement, but we do have finally some concrete information on patch 9.2. Not like a date or anything crazy yet, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot to talk about. So today I'm going to be joined by my good bunny Cop, and we're going to be having a look at, kind of having a discussion about what was and what wasn't discussed here. So let's get right to it. Hey, Cop, you ready? I'm ready to go. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it, buddy.
All right, man. So yeah, so let's hear your thoughts first. I'm interested in hearing what you had to think about that.
I am so excited. It's so different, and yet it's so completely Warcraft. Like everything. The first thing that strikes me is the visuals, and they're amazing. But then I start thinking about it's a lot of what I expected, but just there's no way to expect everything that they said, right? So I don't know. I'm just
Yeah, I gotta tell you right now, one of the major things that I loved and hated about Shadowlands simultaneously was how amazing some of the stuff looked in it. So Ardenweald and Bastion are two of my favorite zones visually ever. They're not only good visually, but also music, which also we didn't, get to hear in this trailer, which is still something we will hear. And I think that the reason I really didn't like the Maw and the beginning of Shadowlands in that content space was because it just wasn't visually very nice looking. And they've done this a lot with Antorus when ABT came out at the end of Legion. They had one zone, I can't remember the name of it, Makari or whatever. That was like insanely good looking. And then they had the Antoran Waste, which was awful looking. And it's just like, I know that sometimes there's places that are awful looking in reality too. But it's just like when you're playing a video game and you see this, I have this image up right now on the screen. It's like, this gorge. I mean, this is beautiful. I've never seen something like this in this game before. It,
striking.
it just
Just
makes
it,
you really excited, regardless of what happens in the zone. I just want to hang out there. And I felt the same way
yeah.
about Dazara Lore and a lot of the zones recently too. But at the same time, like the zones like Maldraxxus and the Maw are just so dull. And I'm just like hoping, got my fingers crossed here. Can we get a Timeless Isle style thing where it's just beautiful? It's just gorgeous. It's so immersive and it feels like you want to be there as well as want to play there. I mean, this was unbelievable. They didn't announce a lot of stuff, but the zone itself, oh my God, I can't freaking wait for the zone, honestly.
Yeah. Me either. Honestly, it's so visually striking. It's amazing to me, and the fact that they were able to adapt that much into their own art style, right? Like they didn't
Yeah.
sell out to make it look good. They easily could have done something incredibly different and been able to justify it. But this was Warcraft to me, and it's Warcraft at its highest level visually for me.
I agree. I mean, this is actually insane to me. Like we're talking about like classic and stuff, especially coming up season of mastery. But it's like, dude, how could you compare that game to this game? It's getting ridiculous now. Like it's actually
It
starting
really
to get a
is.
bit ridiculous. The visuals in WoW, it's almost impressive what they've done with an engine that is, seemingly. I mean, there's no way it's. I don't think anybody thinks it's a very modern look. The way the game has
Yeah.
looked over the years, but. I don't know, man. So what'd you think about like the tier sets and stuff? They showed some images and stuff, and
It, Yeah, the tier sets look really good. I've never been the type of person who worried about the tier set visuals. You know me, I use the same transmog since MOP. So, but it's really, they look gorgeous. They looked unique. And that's the
yeah,
big thing, they looked like, nothing that had ever come before. And I think that was really important if you're going to bring tier sets back. They just didn't look like a bunch of recolors because they'd never live it down if they did.
oh, it's very true, obviously. So tier sets historically have been something that most people, I think, are excited about to collect, not just necessarily to use during the tier, but also to have moving forward. Over the years, I think they got really kind of lame. A lot of the DK ones, especially, like early DK ones, were very unique looking. Early Paladin ones too. And then over the years, I was like, these are, you can just write these off. And I mean, even in Tomb of Sargeras, it was literally just a complete reskin of the tier 6 one. And I remember scratching my head. I'm like, well, it looks awesome. I'm glad to collect it again, but it's like I wonder how many more of these we can get. So now they're bringing them back, but a relatively big announcement that wasn't actually in the announcement video itself that Jix actually pointed out is in the the post that they made to accompany it. It says, harness the power of the first ones by collecting distinctive class armor sets via raids, PvP, or Mythic Plus dungeons. Each set comes with
Ooh.
powerful 2 and 4 set bonuses that complement your unique abilities. So that, yeah, so yeah, you can get these in all content. And I was saying that from the get go. They need to find a way to do that. Even though I like the way the domination gear set up, relatively well in this season, I do think it's just kind of lame. Even once you have it, it's like, well, I can't use this in Mythic Plus, so it's a lot less interesting. So I'm eager to see how they do this. What's your immediate thoughts to that?
That's just insane because can you use the tier set bonus from say raid in Mythic Plus or Mythic Plus in raid? If so, can you mix and match?
Hmm.
Can
You,
you
you
get like
you think they'll be
like all?
separate?
I think they'll be separate because the way you said that, it sounds to me like they're separate sets.
Hmm.
Separate sets because they're the stuff that you would want in PvP is not going to be useful in raid and vice versa, right?
Maybe.
So
Interesting. That would be an. I would be surprised by that if that was the way, but you make a good point for it, a good case for it. That's interesting. If that
and I
happened, then
mean,
yeah,
because
not a question.
there's people who only do Mythic Plus, right? They don't raid at all. So for them to have something unique and useful for them, to me, that's a way to do it. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, if you look at the set bonuses historically, like the one I remember the most was every time you hit multiple targets with Blood Boil or whatever, you got a bunch of versatility. That was excellent in 5-mans and it was excellent in raids. So I would be surprised if they were different because I don't I don't know why they would do that, but it's a great idea. I mean, if they did do it, and you're right about that, that'd be very interesting.
Yeah,
I,
for sure. Because I
I,
mean,
I expect them. It says like to complement your unique abilities, so I expect them to be. I was thinking that might even be like a covenant buff. Like there might be something like it just empowers your covenant or something as well. Like who knows? Like I'm at a loss for what it could mean, like for the actual gameplay moving forward. That they're going to actually be there in Mythic Plus because that's such a huge deal.
yeah, for sure. Like I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see how it's implemented, and I can't help but feel if we had actually had a BlizzCon, we would have so much more information right now. And that's kind of where we're lacking is we don't have that Q&A or that deep dive that we
Yeah,
would normally get, and we're going to get that dribbled over time now. So
I think so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a major patch. There'll be a PTR coming. I don't know when. I would say that we have a lot of potential to see it maybe this week or the coming week. It's pretty close to the last week that we just had, or pretty close to the last patch which we just had. So I don't know when they would do it, but regardless, I just the thing about the sets is like so there are also the visuals. And I just want to say, like, I do think they're very unique looking compared to everything else that we've ever had class wise. But honestly, at first glance, I have trouble deciphering which one is which class, and that
yeah,
worries me a bit. But Wowhead has the pictures, and it shows DK is the one in the middle of the first picture, and it's like that just doesn't really look like a DK set to me. Although the helmet has something that's DK specific. But I don't even really care because, these are probably the normal versions of these set bonuses or these tier
yes,
sets. And if you remember, even in Legion, when they did the sets that I criticized, the Mythic was insanely different than the regular. Like, it was so much cooler. And I
yeah,
would say that, like, the visual fidelity here is it's impressive as it stands still. Like, just in this image. And I cannot imagine what visual effects will be accompanying it because, again, in Legion they had some very unique ones. So that's yeah. I mean, I think the theme of this patch, man, is gorgeous. Like that's all you got to say. Everything about it, and
it's
and all those creatures. What'd you think of those creatures?
amazing, absolutely amazing. I love that they're kind of like proto versions of everything that we've kind of seen before, like the proto chicken, so we know which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? It's just
Yeah, that was funny. I had to throw that little joke in there. I get it.
yeah, 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 for sure. But it's just they're so good. They're so good that I'm impressed. Again, to fit that kind of thing into the Warcraft art style without selling out in any way, just they've outdone themselves for sure.
It's just so breathtaking, and I can see why they're proud of it because it must have been. I mean, just the way they were talking about the water. I'm going to tell you right now, water is always a huge topic for me in a game in general. I feel
Yeah,
like there's just something very primal about seeing an expanse of water, regardless of if it's a lake, a puddle, an ocean, anything. And
yeah,
using it well in a video game is something that has always resonated with me. And the fact that they like I mean, they probably don't necessarily agree with me in the same way, but they kind of like our thoughts aligned on this where you're using water as almost like a threshold. Like they said in the thing, I was like, oh my God. When they said those words, I was like, dude, that's how water should always be used in this game. There should always be something above the water and something below the water. And man,
yes,
I'm actually like just the concept there. It's just so cool. Like it's like a playground for creation, right? That zone, is that what you took from that?
yeah. That's exactly what I took from that, and I'm right there with you. I've always loved the way water looks when it's done well. I mean, famously, everybody hated Vashj'ir, and it was one of my favorite zones of all time, just because it's visually so striking. And I just love the way the water looks in this new, uh, how they've done it, and the above, below, and all that. Chef's kiss, good.
It's just so
Absolutely,
cool. Yeah, I mean,
it really is.
honestly, it's just so visually striking. I wish that there was more. I hope that I can't wait to explore that zone. I'm gonna say that right now. When they announced Nazjatar and Mechagon and stuff, I was like, I don't really like the zones didn't look like anything I wanted to explore. I've obviously
Yeah,
spent a lot of time there for gameplay reasons, which we still don't know anything about. They did talk about the that like language or whatever. What'd you think about that? That was a unique thing to hear that.
it was so intrigued by that because it's such a great concept. I mean, to use music as the language, and I just was like, wow, that is absolutely perfect. That's what you got to do, Blizzard. That's a
It's
great way
creative,
of doing it.
very unique.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're, but it's not just a language, right? Like it's actually the new progression system. So I think
Yes.
they kind of did this already in season 2 here with the research, where it was like, I think if we were told about that at the time, we might have a similar reaction. We're like, wow, that's a very unique idea. So I'm trying to draw parallels between the two systems already without knowing a lot about the newest one. But like the research system was very unique in the fact that the research was the rep, but it was also the currency, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, I wonder how this is going to play out because I'm going to read it word for word. It says, team up with the curious Atoma sidekick in this new progression system to learn the lost language of the progenitors and delve deeper into the secrets of Zareth Mortis, unlocking an array of new zone activities, daily quests, events, and rewards. So, I mean, that's exactly what you would expect, right?
Exactly what I would suspect. And it's almost like we're going to be building the base as we unlock this, and it almost feels kind of like very much a better version of our from WAD, whatchamacallit, our base in WAD.
Garrison.
There you go. Only it's going to be a communal one, right? So as we unlock this, as we get more currency, as we repair things that maybe Zoval or the Devourers have damaged, the base of our base of operations expands, gets better. Our understanding with the Atoma gets better.
Yeah.
I see it as being weeks and weeks of progression through this. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it sounds cool at a base level. I hope it'll be compelling. I know a lot of people didn't like, myself included. I didn't really like the research concept, but it wasn't necessarily because of how, like, it wasn't the thought of it. It was just the actual gameplay of it and how you had to just. I thought like 90% of it came from these stupid jumping puzzles in that zone, which I didn't like at all.
Yeah,
So I don't. Obviously, they're not doing that. But I could see it being like a learning. Maybe the new currency is like the learning. Like you're learning of
yeah,
these languages and you're learning one letter at a time, kind of thing, and then you're gaining rep with it. So I hope that they'll learn from their 9.1 and 9.2, 9.0 and 9.1 stuff where they had these systems in place that just needed a few tweaks. They became a lot more fun. I mean, I don't know if you've actually been out with these changes to Korthia, but it's ridiculous how different that zone is now than it
Yeah.
was prior to this patch. So I don't expect it to ever be like that fast out of the gate, but just the way that you can kind of be a little bit more freeform with it would be what I'd like to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like you to be able to choose your path as you get better and better with them. Like
Hmm.
maybe you're learning letter X, Y, Z or A, B, C, and you get different progressions for it. I wouldn't even mind seeing if those progressions tuned into the three systems they talked about. The one makes you a little bit better at PvP, one makes you a little bit better at Mythic Plus, one is better for raid type of thing. And eventually
Yeah,
you'll unlock them all.
could be. I'd be interested to see. Obviously, there'll be all kinds of new mounts based on those creatures. I would say they might be gorgeous. What did you think about maybe a mount that you wanted to see?
Absolutely. I'd love to see an Atoma mount. Atoma. I keep wanting
Oh,
to call them automatons, right? But
yeah, that's not the
one of
right
the
word, Cop. Please don't say that.
yes. Oh, but that's what I keep wanting to call them. Yeah, no, I'd love to see one of those. I'd love to see some of the primordial things like the frog. We already have the frog mounts from BFA, but and one from Shadowlands, but it looks like that's a primordial version of it. I'd love to see that as a mount. I wouldn't even mind seeing a giant primordial chicken mount because they all just look so good,
Yeah,
so
that
good.
chicken. That's funny. So I guess another relatively big deal is that it seems confirmed that this will be the final, at least what everybody is saying, the final story patch of Shadowlands.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm disappointed in that. I ain't gonna lie. I would have loved to have seen us in some way thwart Zoval and have him make his way to Azeroth and kind of us go after him there. As the final beat, we wind up back in Azeroth fighting off Zoval, but that could still happen. Like they they didn't say we were fighting Zoval. They didn't say it was the last raid of the expansion.
Yeah.
They just said this is the last big story beat.
Yeah, and I'll read the quote. Shadowlands was planned as a total of 3 chapters before the pandemic, is the quote. So that
Yeah.
means this is the, and I think the other, I don't have it in front of me, but I think the other quote was closing the book on a story or something like that. So, I mean, I guess
Yeah,
that's very,
and one of the things that they said, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to watch it twice, was they said this is a story that's been building since Warcraft 3 through
yeah.
several of our expansions into Shadowlands. So again, we had there's some things that they didn't talk about that I am still certain we're going to see. One of which is going to be Arthas. One of which is they're
Mm.
going to be. There has to be something, right?
Yeah,
Like there
I think
has to be
Anduin's
something.
story has to connect in that way, yeah.
Yeah,
Although
for
I'm a
sure.
little more surprised now that we've completely left reality. You know what I mean? Now that we're in this zone, I don't know where Arthas would come from. But yeah, you know what? Let's talk about the raid, man. What'd you think about that preview of that raid?
Oh, that looked insane. Like it legit, just from the shots that they showed, it looked like the hugest raid ever because it all looks huge and outdoors. And oh man, I don't know. It's going to be amazing. It looks like we're going to get to go. What's his name? Mal'Ganis. Looks like we're going to
Oh
take him
yeah,
down finally.
another odd there,
Um,
yeah. It's just
so
freaking amazing. I'm watching it again now, and I think the words he used were like, it defies reality. Like I'm looking at this thing where these giant pillars are like floating up and down. I'm gonna tell you right now. I remember when again ABT was announced, and they showed the Agrimar area, and they also showed the ANR area, and the rest of that raid is not great in my opinion visually. They didn't necessarily show it in the trailer, but that raid still will always stand out to me for those 2 areas. Where you fight Agrimar is gorgeous, and I love going there every once in a while and just throwing on an inky black potion because it's ridiculous. And the same thing with ENR. This has those vibes like 211. And I assume that the whole raid isn't going to look like this. But I do think, the domination or whatever the tower we're fighting in now is very samey.
yeah,
I like some of the rooms of it. But obviously you fight the Terragu in a place that's very familiar. Most of the raid fights take place in a place that doesn't look very
yeah,
distinct from the rest of the expansion. But this is like, I mean, the whole freaking patch is like this. So I don't know. Maybe I'll become numb to it eventually. But Yeah, some of these clips from this raid are just like, wow, I can't even imagine what the raid fight's gonna take like there's this picture here that I just freeze framed on, and it looks like these giant portals, like with hundreds of yards, maybe thousands of yards of space in between them. What the hell
Yeah.
is gonna take place there? Is that a raid fight? Is there?
Yep.
It looks like ANR. I mean, it looks like you're gonna be flying all around the world and doing the fight. So I don't know.
I mean, I think they have a real opportunity, given what they've shown us, to do some very unique things, right? Like they could have completely unique mechanics they never even thought of before. You could have half the raid team miles away from the other half, and you know, they very similar to the stuff that you did like back in some of the Nax fights back in the original Nax, where you would have to have people on both sides, but now you're hundreds of miles away from each other.
It's come a long way, hasn't it? The question I
Yeah,
have is, so then there's two things that are really weird about this raid's announcement. One is, first of all, Mal'Ganis. Now, I know they've been building towards this with the Dreadlords and everything,
yeah.
but like, as somebody who's like big into the lore, what do you think about that? Like Mal'Ganis coming through, and now not only coming through, but also being a part of this final raid, which is supposed to be about this like, this ununderstandable, completely foreign landscape. What is his role in this?
Well, one of the big things that we did in the last patch was when we were creating those new sigils, was they rescued Denathrius, right? He's still stuck in the sword, but they rescued Denathrius, and Denathrius has been working with Zoval for the longest time, and supposedly he created the Dreadlords. I'm still not 100% that he created the Dreadlords. I still think there's more to them than that, just given some of the things that they've seen in some of the books around the Shadowlands, where they talk about being the ultimate infiltrators and that they've infiltrated the Shadowlands, they've infiltrated this, that, and the other. And so I'm not
Yeah.
100% certain that he actually created them, but if Denathrius is with Zoval and they're still serving Denathrius, it would make sense that the Dreadlords would be there.
And here's a
Plus,
crazy stretch that just comes to my mind here. Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now. This actually, I'm looking again at a clip where Mal'Ganis is being fought in a raid. I'm comparing to ABT constantly. So if you remember, ABT also featured Tichondrius, and it was
yeah,
for the same reason. Because the string pullers of the Legion were like, "Yo, we're sick of your shit," basically. So this time, Tichondrius is not, or Mal'Ganis is not captured. He looks to be completely free of his own will. But the last time Tichondrius was featured, we had major premonitions of Sylvanas' development, right? Now, Mal'Ganis has a very interesting connection to one of our favorite characters. So what do you think about that?
yeah,
Could be an Arthas connection, right? I mean, it seems
yeah,
like they
could very
really
easily.
they wouldn't. I'm not I'm like very convinced that everything in this game's development is all being planned out meticulously. And I know
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't always translate to that in reality, but like when we were just talking about this, something that obviously was just a
Hmm.
dumb idea, but the whole Galakrond thing. But anyway, we were just talking about the potential of being in Northrend in some way in the future,
Hmm.
and I think it completely makes sense because they basically lined up a bunch of TBC characters to come back in Shadowlands, and then they released TBC, and they did the same thing with WoD and the film. I feel like they've done that a lot in the last probably 6 or 7 years, and it's got to be a marketing plan. Like that, it's not just a
Yeah,
coincidence that we had Warlords of Draenor, and then they released a film about half the characters that were in Warlords of Draenor, and same thing with TBC. Like Kael'thas and a bunch of characters from TBC are actual main characters in Shadowlands, right? Like that's not a
yeah,
coincidence. So seeing Mal'Ganis is not a coincidence. That you have to assume that, but why? I just don't. I just still can't figure out why.
yeah. I like I say, it's maybe they're actually planning on redoing the Warcraft videos. Only this time, Arthas' story.
Oh
You know.
God. Oh man, don't even tell me that. Oh, we could talk about that for another hour. But okay, cool. So yeah, I have to say, I'm very satisfied. I think there was probably one or two other things. What else? Anything else that came to your mind while you were watching that?
Yeah, I'm. There's stuff that they just didn't say. Like I would have liked to have seen them talk a bit more about Sylvanas' motives. I would have liked to have seen them talk about. To see they the way they said it made her sound like a chump, and I never liked that. I kind of see her as a master strategist more than a chump who got fooled. So I don't think we've seen the end of Sylvanas' story. I'd like to have known more about that. I'd like to have there have been the not the last story beat, because I don't think it originally was meant to be the last story beat. So I don't know.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know. It's it.
yeah, I feel you. There's another post that just got made, guys, and I'm gonna tell you this. This is a big one here. Okay. They're going to separate the raid. Now they did this last time that I remember, at least in ICC, and I think it was mostly a function of pacing. But I'm gonna read to you what it says here. The
Okay.
new raid consists of 11 bosses, which on its own 11 instead of 10, and Anduin appears as the 8th named character. During the first open week of the raid, you will only face up to Anduin. This part was intentionally planned and allows us to take a closer look at Anduin's storyline before the final showdown. You will learn a lot from this story.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Okay,
Because
and
we
there's
need.
more.
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to keep reading. The story of rescuing Anduin takes precedence. By subduing Bolvar and Jaina at once, it was clear that the domination magic used by the guard was very powerful. To deal with the guard, you will need to know about this magic. Anduin knows more about the magic of domination handled by the guard than anyone else, so he can work with him to learn how to deal with the magic the guard uses. This is all translated from a Korean interview, so it seems a little awkward. So
Yeah.
the question in that interview, you mentioned earlier that in the first week of the raid, you can even face Anduin. After a certain period of time, the next raid area will open, and it will be implemented in a way that will ultimately confront the guard. Yes, the first week offers an important part of the story, where you can even deal with Anduin and fend off the guard's domination. It was intentionally set for a natural story development. After that, the region will open in time for the opening of Mythic difficulty. Incidentally, the guard is the last boss of the burial site of the original being raid. If the guard is finally defeated, the final curtain of the Shadowlands story will come to an end. What the fuck is that? I don't know what I'm even reading. Did they mean the jailer instead of the guard? I don't know what that means. I'm not.
Maybe. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe I might yet still be satisfied that there is another part of this thing coming. Like, think about it. People were talking about, possibly going into Northrend. If we can thwart Zoval and he's trying to escape, going through the break in the roof of the world seems logical, you know,
It's
to
true. It's
get
almost like
Azeroth.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that should be a bigger deal than it is. I agree.
So who knows? I don't know. I don't even know. Um, wow.
But it does
I,
say the guard is the last boss of the burial site of the raid, of the burial site of the original being raid. So I assume this is all. Let's just assume this is all a terrible translation, and they mean the jailer is the last boss of whatever the name of this raid is. I don't
yeah.
actually know for sure. Anyway, if the guard, being the jailer, is finally defeated, the final curtain of the Shadowlands story will come to an end. Why would you use the word curtain? I mean, I'll tell you, I'll never forget the first time there was a leak a long time ago that ended up being entirely correct for Mists of Pandaria, and it was all translated from I believe Chinese, and it was like it was like almost scary. Like I understood so little of what I was reading in English. I was like, what is happening? It was like, and this is I feel the same way. I'm like, what am I reading? I don't understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, time will tell, of course. It always does. But
You're right about that, Cop. That's always the case.
man, I don't know. It's this is huge.
I agree. So predictions for PTR. What do you think?
Um. Well, here's the thing, and I've said this a couple of times. I was reading something on Twitter. I don't remember exactly what it said, but there is supposedly a Sylvanas novel coming out, and it got delayed. Okay, it got
Oh.
delayed to come out March 29th, and the reason they gave was they didn't want to uh, reveal something lore-wise in the book before it was revealed in game. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's when 9.2 is coming, and that was March 29th. I feel like that's around when that's coming.
So around March.
So
Or it'd have to be
yeah,
before the novel then, right? Or maybe
yeah, it
the
would have
same
to be
day or
before the
something.
novel. So
Yeah.
March 29th is a Tuesday. So figure maybe March 22nd, maybe March 15th, the 9.2 comes out. So depending on how long they want the development cycle of this to be, It might still be a week or two before we get the PTR.
Okay. Yeah, it's a
So
good point. I
that's
mean, if that did happen in March, which does seem like a very viable date regardless, maybe that's a little fast given what we've seen this expansion, but I mean, I do think I'm gonna tell you right now, I can't talk about anything more than I'm just
yeah,
saying these phrases, but I've heard a lot about this patch, and it had nothing to do with anything they announced today. So that's very shocking to me because I thought we were going to hear a lot more about class stuff, more about
yeah,
more design stuff. I didn't, obviously the zone is a big deal, but I kind of didn't really think that there was a lot to talk about with the zone. I guess it's the most logical thing to announce. But
yeah,
the gameplay of that zone is crucial. So until that PTR actually comes, I feel like we just got a teaser, and
yeah.
I do think if we're talking about mid March, which again it makes complete sense to me, that would be basically 4 months away, which would be I would think like at the earliest or at the latest it would probably be first week of December for the PTR, huh?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I think that's about when we'll get it, and we'll get to finally see what it looks like and get our hands on it. And who knows? Who knows how far they'll let us go to begin with? But
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
pretty exciting stuff. So let me know any other things you wanted to talk about or bring up.
Well, let me just really quickly because we've had a bunch of comments on the stream, so let me go through them really quickly, see if there's anything good. Um, uh, I'm gonna butcher this name, but Tewin said, "Any chance we'll get two legendaries?" And Faxi seems to think that there is a definite possibility of that. In fact, he linked something somewhere.
Baxi, what's up, buddy?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think that's what I was thinking. There might be a lot more gameplay. Like I think honestly, gameplay news might be bigger. And another new piece dropped. I'm glad we're delaying this long. Another new one. Jump back into action with the new level 60 character boost on the front page. So now they're allowing you to boost to level 60 starting what today?
probably. It's a
Wow.
great way to get people back. You know how much they love to do that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It seems like
yeah.
that's in right now, or it's
Let me
very
just
near to being in.
let me check the shop because I'm on level
Check that
60
shop, Pop.
boost.
Level 60,
Level
boom.
60 boost right there.
Okay,
75
60,
bucks Canadian, so that would be
$75. That's a lot of money.
that's about 50 US, I would
No, it's
imagine.
60. $60 in the United States. At least for
Oh,
me,
there
when
you
I
go.
look at it, it says 60.
Okay, there you go. For sure, for sure. So they got the level boost in. Yeah, we're in the end. To quote the Doctor Strange person, we're in the end game now.
Doctor Strange. Yeah, I've heard that's a Marvel guy, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the Marvel guys from that MCU thingamabobber.
I've heard of that. Okay, keep reading though.
Okay. Jix says, how about tier sets also coming from Mythic Plus? We did talk about that a little bit, but it's very huge, and it bears going over again. I think my idea was, are they going to be different separate sets? Jix, do you think maybe
Yeah.
there'll be one tier set from Mythic Plus? Because there's a tier set from PvP as well.
Cop's got the idea, Jix. I don't know if you heard him talk about it before, but he got the idea that it might actually be separate sets as well, not just one set that you can get in 3 different content pieces, which who knows? You never know.
Might be able to mix match them. You never know.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be cool.
Jix also mentions that Mal'Ganis is, and correctly too, Mal'Ganis is in the Venthyr campaign from the 9.1 part, right? Like
Yeah, oh
we
yeah.
we fight him, he escapes, and all that kind
Yeah,
of
I remember
stuff.
that, yeah.
Yeah, and at the end, there is a once you've done the whole 9.1 campaign, there's a book on the ground that you pick up, and he's like, "Aha! You thought you could keep me trapped? I have escaped!"
I
And off
remember
he
reading that.
goes. Yeah,
It was a nice book too.
yeah, it was a nice book. That's why I picked it up off the ground. Didn't know he was going to jump me like that.
Yeah, that's what happens.
And then Theo says, have a good leveling stream discussion. Metro, good to hear your voice, sir. Seems very interesting this. Yes, it does.
Yeah, Theo, you're right. It's always good to hear my voice. Like every once in a while, I have these grave nightmares where I wake up and I can't speak, and I just wake up in like this cold sweat, and I'm freaking out, and it ruins the rest of my day. So it's always I agree entirely.
Definitely continued. Uh, Jix says, two Legos, Conduit, Soulbind changes, and tier set. Soulbind changes. I don't recall hearing anything
They
about
did
that.
say it was just like one of those passing things. They're like, also we're going to be updating, like basically like they're gonna say like, they talked about Tazavesh being split up into 2 dungeons for Mythic Plus as well. I think it was just said like, oh, there's going to be new Soulbind conduit upgrades, Covenant upgrades, something like that. So,
Yeah.
and then like while they talked about it, they just said, oh yeah, wait, what is this? This is actually confirmed. Equip 2 legendaries at a time in patch 9.2, account-wide unlock from new zone. Dude, we literally, I shouldn't even end this. We should just sit here for the next 2 hours because more and more stuff keeps coming out.
Absolutely, I'm down. I'm not doing a lot of leveling because we're talking so
Well,
much, but
yeah,
yeah.
it's just kind of ridiculous. So it says players will be able to equip 2 legend. I just read this whole thing again, and
Yeah,
again,
sure.
translated from like I don't know. It says Korean again. I'm not. I don't speak Korean, guys. If you don't know me very well. Okay, in the entire Shadow Realm version, apart from hunters who have orange weapons, do other classes have a chance to obtain orange weapons in 9.2? Here's the answer. In fact, we have always had a grand plan for legendary items, especially in such a final version. In this final version, the way we obtain orange equipment is not limited to the way of climbing the tower. Players can There are many ways to obtain orange equipment. We hope to take care of all players, whether you are a rice player, a group player, or a PvP player. Of course, we also have a huge enhancement for players in such a final version, that is, the double orange system. We have been committed to improving the player experience in the game, but this does not mean that we will do everything in all respects, because Sylvanas is an iconic archer character. So after killing her, obtaining very rare loot not only meets the setting, but also enhances the player experience. It will also create a very high degree of discussion on social platforms. We arranged this in the game, and not everyone can get the same experience, but as long as we can to fit the storyline, we are still willing to increase the fun of the game by adding Orange Woo.
What? Orange? What?
I love it.
That's awesome.
I'm with you. Okay, here's the next question. How does the balance work of double orange? Is it a random match between any 2 orange outfits, or is it limited to the 1+1 mode of Covenant Orange and Professional Orange? Here's the answer. It is still under study. We are still waiting for feedback from various channels, and what is certain is that players need to unlock double orange by increasing the reputation of enlightened brokers in the new area. Of course, unlocking double orange is the account shared. As long as one character under battle.net unlocks double orange, all characters can get this buff.
Can't even. It's so awesome.
So account-wide double legendaries, I think. Double orange,
That,
sorry, yeah.
yeah, well, at least unlocking the ability is going to be account wide, is what I get from that.
It's really good. Oranges are very good for you, honestly.
It's true. Oranges, lots of vitamin C. They keep you from
Yes.
getting scurvy.
The scurvy thing, yes. We've talked about this before, you and I.
True. Scurvy is bad. Bad scurvy.
This is insane. I bet there's gonna be even more stuff. I bet there's gonna be even more stuff keep coming here.
Absolutely. I love the idea of the double legendary. You know what I've always said is that I would like to see with the soul binds is I'd like to see you be able to do a second path down them. So
Oh
maybe that's
yeah.
something that we'd be able to do is to go down a different route and get like
I always
so
thought
like
I always thought a second soulbind would have been a good idea. I never really said it
yeah
too much, but what do you think? Like having just a second soulbind.
yeah for sure. I mean I could see them going whole hog and doing all three if they were going to do that,
Oh,
where you could
whole
have.
hog. Okay, Goff. Jeez, relax.
I'm sorry. I'm an old man. I use old man terms.
That's a very
Um,
sexualized phrase.
I hadn't thought of it like that, but okay.
I know you hadn't.
But I had always thought, like, one of the things, the original Theatar, back on the Shadowlands beta, had something that was insanely good for Windwalkers, but it was originally available behind a potency slot, but now it's behind an endurance slot, so no Windwalker will take it. Right, gives all the versatility. If I was able to do a second path down that, I could conceivably get that, and it would be huge for player power.
I guess so. Yeah, I mean they could do infinite amounts of stuff. Honestly, that I'm
Yeah.
actually very shocked. This is very interesting. So what else?
Apparently, I am a disgusting true Blizzard guy.
I totally
Whole
agree. That whole
hog.
hog comment was completely out of line, and I don't. I have a lot of respect for you. Like you and I are exalted, and I'm
Yes.
in the Paragon levels with Cop right now. Like I've already gotten a few boxes, but we lost some reputation together. I think after
I'm
that
sorry. I'm
comment.
sorry, buddy. I didn't realize people would see it that way.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. All right. Well, I think I don't want to sit here all day, so I think I'm going to call it for my end. Anything
Sounds
else?
good, buddy.
Any other closing comments that you want to make after all this?
I am just so ready. Like I said, maybe it's pounding my head against the same boss for the last month and a half, but I am ready for 9.2, and I cannot wait.
I'm excited. I cannot stress this enough. I'm just very excited to actually be in that zone. And it sounds lame,
Yes.
and people are gonna act like dumb about it, but like I the visuals that has been shown in that, it's just gorgeous, man. I just really
Yes.
can't express that enough. Like this game is very, very it's got a lot of weird visual stuff to it, and I think this patch might be the best that I've ever seen. I mean, even just
I
these
agree.
still images I'm seeing are like, wow, these are the most like the prettiest things I've ever seen in this video game entirely.
First thing I said when we started talking, it's visually the most stunning thing I've ever seen, and it's in their own art style, which is what impressed the heck out of me. You know what I mean? It's they didn't have to sell out to get it to work.
Yeah, I
I'm
agree.
so
It does.
happy with
You're
it.
right. That's actually a really good point. I didn't really fully think about that. It looks like WoW. It doesn't look like
Yeah.
something that's not WoW, which I was worried about when they Pandaria. I feel like was the first
Yes.
time that ever happened, and I was like, man, that might actually not look like WoW to me. There's this image. I don't even know what this is. There's this image. It looks like it's from an actual PTR of a character standing in front of a thing with a screen on it, and there's like a ton of icons. I can't make any of them out. I don't know, man. I'm gonna sit here all day and think about this. So I got to get some stuff done IRL, and I'm gonna go golf. So thanks for watching, and again, Cop, it's always been a pleasure. We'll hope to reconvene on some things. Well, okay, hold on a second. One more thing.
Okay.
Solo queue. Solo Shuffle PvP Brawl coming to Shadowlands Eternity End Patch 9.2.
What?
Here's another one. Morgan Day. I love PvP, and we had reintroduced Conquest in Shadowlands for players to buy their gear. As Conquest became more exciting for players and more wanted to get engaged in PvP, we often get a request about queuing for rated PvP solo. This has many challenges, but we're introducing a new PvP brawl with the Eternity's End update as our take on what solo queue in World of Warcraft could look like. It's called Solo Shuffle, and we want players to give us feedback and see if there's a feature we can permanently add. The idea is that we take 6 players, throw them in a pool, and have them fight in 3v3 arena matches in every possible combination you could form among those 6 players. The one with the best rating at the end essentially wins. We think that's a unique solution instead of trying to come up with some matchmaking system that can understand meta group compositions. We think it's going to be really fun and create opportunities for interesting social interactions. What do you think?
Wow, that might actually get me into PvP. I've never been one for open world PvP, especially non-consensual open world PvP.
Non-consensual. Yes.
But I do enjoy the idea of being able to just solo queue for something like that and progress, because you'll get all kinds of different ways to do it. It sounds fun to me, which PvP normally doesn't. So I'm excited. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And one last thing Jix brings up, I'm slightly worried about a tier set and 2 legendaries at the same time. The slot constraints are going to cause issues, and obviously they caused issues in Season 1 or Season 2. What do you think about that?
Um, yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons why we were getting why we got full refunds. so that we can put them in new slots. But I
Could
mean,
be.
that's something why we can deal with on the PTR, right? Because that's where we kind of did it for the 9.1 thing. That's where
I
we
just
kind of addressed.
I just wonder if maybe they have a more creative solution. My question originally, which I never actually got into, how is this going to work for Mythic Plus? Like, obviously in raids, they drop from bosses, you get the item. But in Mythic Plus, the loot pools have already existed, and there's now going to be 10 dungeons, right? If there's only 5 pieces total, how do you distribute them across 10 dungeons? And I was thinking they might just be an extra item that you add to something you already have. And that's what I suggested. I gave very strong feedback on the domination gear system. I said that it was a great idea and that instead they should have allowed it to just be a socket that you add to your gear instead of having to be on specific gear. And I think the response I got was like, that's a great idea, but there's some technical constraints with that. And it made me
Yeah,
optimistic to think that maybe they'll solve that problem in the future. But I do think that that is the way to move forward. I don't know if that's how it's going to work. It probably won't, but I do think the system we have with legendaries is definitely not well designed alongside any other gear besides legendaries. That's also important to have on. But regardless of that, that then makes it so you have presumably at least 6 mandatory items again. And that's kind of how it is in Shadowlands or in whatever season 2 now. But I don't know. I just don't know how they solve this problem moving forward. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's something that they're going to have to look at for 10.0 for sure. But I like the idea of being able to have these pieces, especially legendaries, because we can decide what our stats are on a legendary, right? Like famously for my Windwalker, I have a lot of trouble getting high crit and high versatility and with enough mastery, right? So being able to have two legendary pieces with the right stats for me is going to be huge. And um, if we have six mandatory pieces and they're statted correctly, that's going to make my life a whole heck of a lot easier. So I don't mind that at all.
fair
But
enough.
Baxi here says that it will be a currency you buy the tokens with. I'm not 100% certain what he means by that.
Is
But
that confirmed somewhere, or is that just? I mean, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's what they
yeah,
should do, or something similar to it. But especially since all these acquisition complaints we had with season 1, just what I think it will be. Yeah,
this,
I think that's what it should be too, for sure. Something
yeah,
that's a little bit more, because it's so important, right? It's just like legendaries.
yeah,
They're more important than legendaries, honestly. Like I think the raid, the domination set is actually more important than having a legendary on. Like it does more damage for
yeah,
sure. So I hope that they'll learn from that.
absolutely, 100%.
And Jix also points
That's
out that he's worried legendaries won't have a viable slot now. I assume they'd solve that. I mean, they already did that in
yeah,
season 2. They added one piece, like one item slot to every single legendary, right? Or at least
yeah,
a vast majority of them. So I'm not worried about this. I don't think this
yeah,
is. If they do manage to mess this up two seasons in a row, it would be like calamitous. Like I think they have. I'm sure they have a plan.
yeah. They've got to have stuff like that planned out. Just because there was such a hoo-ha about recrafting
Hoo ha!
legendaries the first time.
You got great
I'm
phrases,
sorry,
Cop.
I'm an old man. I'm an
Great
old man.
phrases. On that, I'm gonna end it. So thanks for watching, guys. Cop's gonna be streaming for the rest of the day. If you see this, go hang out with him. And I'm sure I'm gonna come back from golf, and there's gonna be another 10 posts. So maybe you and I will talk again. But thanks for
Sounds
watching.
good,
Any
buddy.
one last closing? Just go ahead and one last closing thought, Cop. Throw it out.
Uh, Hogwild and hoo-ha are not bad phrases. That's my closing thought.
You heard it here first. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.